Don't go away, sunshine, don't go away. Last week, after concluding that it was not old seed that was causing poor germination in my soil blocks, that it was probably the transplant soil mix that I had made the previous year, I decided to try making soil blocks out of potting soil, which is the only real option available in town. I bought a bag of the potting soil and made up a batch of soil blocks. I determined that one bag would make about 6 flats of 72 of the soil blocks at the 1.5 inch size. Then I checked to see about how many flats that I would need for the entire season's transplants, which was about 20. And that meant that I needed to buy about 4 more bags of potting soil. But just to make sure I had enough, I bought 5 more bags of potting soil because you never know when the stores here will run out of things. So what is this stuff made out of? Stuff. And derived from synthetic something or other, I don't know. So yeah, hopefully this stuff works. I used the soil blocks that I had made from the potting soil to restart the transplants that I had planned to go out into the greenhouse beds. And if there was success, then I knew that I would be able to make more soil blocks from potting soil in order to do all of the transplants that would be going out into the garden for the main season. And then I had some little extra bit of soil from that half bucket, so I decided to make some little tiny soil blocks just to make sure that it wasn't the tiny soil blocks that were causing issues with the germination. Like, for example, maybe they were getting too dry or something like that. So what I'm going to do with these little extras is plant most all of them with Italian kale. And if they germinate and come up well, what I'm going to do is just plant them out in the greenhouse bed where last week I put the Italian kale plugs that actually survived.
Someday when I grow up, I want a field of baby kale in a giant greenhouse, just like this.
And then like one of these little sets here, I'm going to seed with Salanova lettuce, just to make sure again that it wasn't the little plugs that were causing the lettuce germination issues. And then I didn't really have a plan for these plugs. The only thing I'm supposed to do starting this week, I'm supposed to start seeding transplants of green onions. And I'm going to do that like 10 sets every week for a number of weeks. So what I'm going to do is probably just take these 2 rows, that's a total of 12 soil blocks, put them in a tub and seed the green onion sets separately. And then the rest of this, I would go ahead and seed with Salanova lettuce because I know they should grow and germinate great in these bigger soil blocks. And if they do well, then I'm going to take these guys out and transplant them into the greenhouse bed where I seeded with Salanova lettuce this week. Just jam them in amongst the seed that's in there. That is the plan. I've got quite a few lettuce coming up, especially in the blocks here that have the perlite. So these need to go under lights. And green onions are not yet up. I've got a few tests with perlite. And then in these little tiny blocks, I've got Black Magic kale coming up. I did all of these in Black Magic because I had a lot of seed. And then I've got a little test of Toscana kale because I was running out of seeds. I didn't want to take too many. And then I've got a little test of red leaf and green leaf lettuce in the little blocks, and they're coming up. So I think, this is funny, this is the newer seed, the Toscana kale, and it's not yet up. And all the older seed, Black Magic, is already coming up. But I put multiple seeds and these little guys for the black magic. I had a lot of seed and it was older, so I wanted to make sure it was coming up. So anyway, everything I think except for the green onions are gonna go under lights. I've got the little kale blocks and miscellaneous on the top there, and the lettuces and the big blocks down below. It is super soggy out here, and it's gonna continue to rain all this week. I came out here to water the beds in the greenhouses. I am in the aluminum basil greenhouse, and early on I've got my little transplants of sugar snap peas on the north side in this bed, plus some direct seeded carrots, which are not up yet. And this bed is still moist, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and water the carrots again just to make sure they're good and soaked. And in this bed, I've got little tiny transplanted Italian kale, and I think I'm gonna wait until we have a sunnyish day and I'll run the drip on this bed, but I think that they're plenty moist. But I'm gonna go ahead and water in all the radishes that I direct seeded at all of the bed ends. And I've got a couple of these little guys popping up already. Radishes. Watered and covered back up. I am in the wooden cucumber greenhouse, and what I have planted early here is a bed of like baby greens. This is the first bed that I direct seeded, and then this is the disaster. Was supposed to be lettuce transplants, but the soil blocks didn't really germinate, so I ended up direct seeding lettuce into that bed, and so there's nothing coming up over here. I am also seeing some radishes at the bed ends coming up in this bed, and also some lofty lettuce mix and perhaps some orach for real this time. So last week I was seeing like random orach coming up all throughout this bed, as if, you know, it was just oh hey, look, this is one of those hoppy skippers that come with the seaweed from the beach, and I think they turn into little flies. Take it easy, buddy. Anyway, but now I'm seeing some orach come up that might be a little bit more uniform, as if it was planted, but I'm still not sure if it's not just volunteer. But look at this. This is definitely some lofty lettuce mix. I did a little tiny 1-foot test plot to see how it does. First time I've ever planted this stuff. So it's coming up really nice. I'm gonna go ahead and water both these beds, the pelleted lettuce seed and the baby greens. I've got everything covered again. It's pretty cool to see a few things coming up. I guess the cool thing about this weather is that with all the rain and clouds, the nighttime temperatures have been mild at, like, you know, even 40 degrees. So yeah, we haven't been freezing at night for a while. Radishes are definitely up now. And radishes are up in this bed too. Along with the lofty lettuce mix. Oakley dokley do. I'm starting to see some germination in the Toscana Italian kale. This little set of blocks, and this is the lettuce and these little set of blocks. All the rest of these are Black Magic Italian kale, which are doing really good. And I'm gonna need to thin these guys. And down here in the lettuce in these larger soil blocks, the ones without perlite are starting to pop up a little bit more, kind of catching up with the ones in the center here that have perlite. So that's pretty groovy. Because germination had gone well enough in the soil blocks that I had made from potting soil, I decided to make up another batch of soil blocks from that potting soil, because I was scheduled to start the first transplants that will eventually go out into the garden for the main season. The sun keeps popping out, and then I get hot. and then it gets cold. So what happened this last week? Last week I did plan B with my soil blocks, and I made them out of potting soil. I added perlite to the tops of some of the soil blocks just to test to see if some wouldn't germinate better with that. Because I tried that last year and that seemed to work. And so yeah, it seems that the lettuce in the soil blocks, the bigger soil blocks, are coming up better in the perlite. So I did 2 different types of kale, Toscana and dazzling blue, 1 flat each. And I did a couple of seeds because I have enough seed. The dazzling blue is from last year. The Toscana seed is from this year. But I did a couple seeds per cell regardless. I did 1 flat of chard for mature chard, and I did a couple of seeds per cell. Again, that was, I think, older seed. Yeah, and so then I did 1 flat, which was half curly parsley, half Italian parsley. And that seed was really old from like 2019. So I just like sprinkled a bunch of seeds in each cell. And then I also did a couple of flats of leeks. And I still have not quite figured out how I really, in the end, want to do my leek starts. Because I need a lot of them. But what I did is I took the soil block and I just kind of filled in the divot with the soil. And then I put a leek seed in each kind of corner. So hopefully, actually, if they both come up, I can split the block and use both of them. And if only one comes up, at least I'll have 1 leek. I probably should have seeded like 3 seeds, 3 or 4 seeds in a corner, but anyway. And then I also did my one little thing, my one little tub of 12 each sets of green onions that I have to, seed each week in succession. And all those are going to go out in the garden when they're ready. And since I don't have room on the bench really beside the window, and the window's a north-facing window anyway, so it's not like there's a lot of light coming in, I put all the soil blocks on the floor in the middle of the house and put a little cardboard fence around them so that we won't trip over them on accident. And it's also cooler down on the floor. Instead of being like 68 degrees, it's more like 62 degrees. And so actually, since as soon as those things germinate, they're going to go out to the greenhouse and get covered in row cover on their little tables until it's warm enough. And then they're just going to grow out there so that they're used to the cooler weather. And then they'll go out in the garden when they're ready. So yeah, and the little starts that are under lights, probably next week I'll be able to plant those in the greenhouse. And those were just a redo. Those were already supposed to be ready and out in the greenhouse. But whatever. And I think that's all for the week. Is that all for the week? I think that's all. See you guys next week. And guess what I'm seeing here? Them are garlics. Garlics poking out everywhere.